Not long ago, I found myself gazing at the dreamy spires of Sacré-Cœur. That magnificent white basilica perched atop Montmartre like a celestial beacon amid the dim glow of the City of Light. There is something sublime, almost unearthly about that iconic house of worship, its Roman Byzantine architecture lifting the soul heavenward in quiet contemplation. Yet, on this muggy summer evening, my mind was firmly rooted in the earthly realm of European mortgage data. You see, I had come to this romantic city at the crossroads of Western civilization to take the pulse of the continental economy. More specifically, to look past the well-manicured grandeur to the financial fortunes and stresses of ordinary European homeowners and borrowers. Because as any astute observer of human nature understands, our physical domiciles are not just shelter, but profound emblems of family, community, and the very meaning of domestic life itself. The numbers I had been studying, courtesy of the good folks at EY, were striking in their mundane mundanity. After years of negative interest rates that made borrowing for a home astonishingly cheap, mortgage lending across the Eurozone is projected to grind to a complete standstill in 2023. 0% growth for the first time in a decade, down from a healthy enough 4.9% clip just last year. On the surface, the explanation is simple: inflation began to spiral out of control, forcing the European Central Bank to enact a series of aggressive interest rate hikes that put the era of practically free money firmly in the rearview mirror. Those ultra-low teaser rates that seemed almost too good to be true were gone in a flash. Housing became less affordable, prospective buyers got spooked, loan demand plummeted. But for citizens across this great continent, from the orderly boulevards of Brussels to the cramped side streets of Naples, the implications run far deeper than just the mechanics of mortgage markets. Because the European home is not just a physical structure to be traded back and forth like some liquid asset. It is a sanctuary, a generational heirloom, a vessel for cherished traditions and the intangible wisps of cultural memory. An Olive Garden, yes, I'm quite familiar with your American restaurant chains, it is not. We like to think of ourselves as rational economic actors, diligently tallying the present value calculations, running the Monte Carlos, checking the UPB every month. But any honest examination of human behavior reveals that when it comes to our most fundamental civic institutions, the family home being paramount, we are also inescapably emotional beings guided by primordial instincts. Continuity, rootedness, permanence, these core longings don't show up on a financial model. Little wonder, then, that the sudden rate-driven affordability crunch has shaken the collective European psyche in ways that transcend the dry data points. In Germany, where hardy Teutonic thrift and the gospel of saving have long reigned, mortgage woes have stoked anguished doubts about the hallowed path to middle-class prosperity. Will the ancestral family homes passed down reverentially from Opa to Enkel forever be out of reach for younger generations? In France, a proud nation that prizes orderly beauty and inherited architectural grace, angst over rising borrowing costs has inflamed already simmering cultural discontents. Just this morning over café au lait and savory croissants, I listened to a lifelong Parisian lament the scourge of real estate speculation, turning his beloved arrondissements into sun-drenched housing deserts. In his words, no less devoid of generational residence and human familiarity. These people, like so many across Europe's great cities and towns, build their identities and life narratives around the multi-generational household, that hallowed sanctum where baptism photos share wall space with images of grandparents grown old and gray under the same sturdy roof. What does it mean if that hallowed dream decays? If the next generation cannot afford to inherit more than just the ghosts of a home they can no longer keep? To be sure, the financial analysts at places like EY are already forecasting a mortgage recovery down the road, as borrowing costs and inflation relent from today's torrid pace, reopening more hospitable on-ramps to homeownership. Growth could potentially rebound to over 4% annually by 2026. And other European credit categories like consumer and business loans may merely flatten out rather than stall completely. But that sanguine outlook presumes a certain level of economic and political stability, a heavy lift in an era of fracturing blocks and civilizational tension. From the NATO friction with Russia to the ever-smoldering debt crisis, the secular forces tearing at the fabric of European unity haven't abated. If households across the continent remain locked out of the property dream, will cynicism and alienation inevitably metastasize? I can't help but worry that angst over shuttered kitchen windows and abandoned garden arbors could become a powerfully demoralizing force, a fresh irritant in the ideological culture wars dividing this cosmopolitan heartland. In an era when demagogues of all stripes seek to splinter us into tribal factions warring over malignant identities, the inability to simply reside with dignity and continuity in ancestral dwellings seems a most elemental of woes. These issues cut to the very heart of how modern European societies conceive of their bargains with citizens, the intrinsic duties that governments owe their people. At least since the post-war social contract took hold, the ability to establish and transmit familial households across generations has been viewed not just as a personal goal, but as a communal right to be actively nurtured through public policy. Sprawling housing projects and homeownership subsidies were designed to weave the fabric of stakeholder citizenship, binding rootless individuals into the stable bedrock of their nations. And so the availability and affordability of mortgage finance is not just some abstract financial data stream, but a profound moral statement about the centrality of domestic permanence, the ability to live with dignity in family homes across the lifespan from infancy to old age. When these core elements of the shared European project become shakier, more tenuous, it represents an evaporation of the old continentalist creed. This may seem like heavy philosophical freight to unload on mere mortgage statistics, but sometimes that's precisely what we commentators must do: use the dry numerical studies as a window into the messy complexities of lived existence, the hidden human narratives that numbers alone can never quite capture. For buried in the endless stream of ECB repos and LTV charts lies an eternal human ache for shelter, comfort, and the chance for familial legacy that cuts to the bone. Already in recent years, the physical security of the home has been threatened by forces like mass migration and urbanization amid the pandemic. Now the existential threat has shifted to the economic realm, as monetary policy lurches have imperiled some of the most basal assumptions about the plausibility of intergenerational homestead transmission. Our deepest spiritual impulses have collided with the cold mechanics of global finance. Mother Europa weeps at the altar of the variable rate helic. Where does that precarious juncture leave us as a people? What will it mean for our old notions of enfranchisement and civic assimilation if growing segments of the populace are systematically disembedded from the permanent household sphere? As I ponder these riddles while roaming the Rue de Rivoli in search of Gâteau Saint-Honoré, I am humbled by the enormity of our civilizational project. For today's European is no soulless economic automaton, but a cultural inheritor marinating in layers of identity, national, ethnic, provincial, congregational, familial. We are spiritual beings, not just rational utility calculators. Our mortgage products must reflect that elemental truth. Otherwise, what distinguishing glories will the old world truly have left to call its own?